Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:06 here. It's O'Connor and Company, and it's day one of CPAC 2025. We're about 3 hours away from the big festivities getting started on the main stage. It'll get launched by my co-host today, Mercedes Schlapp. You love the Latin beat. Look at you with your Miami sound machine.
It's my favorite time of the morning show because of the song.
KT McFarland will join us at 8:05, and Mercy, you're going to launch things with Vice President J.D. Vance. That's why the Secret
Don't
Service
be jealous because I know you have a bromance with him. I know this is a very.
It's a man crush. I would like it to develop into a bromance.
If you would like, you could hold my coffee and just stand right next to me so you can see him.
Totally love to do that. Are you joking? Are you kidding? Is that a thing? Can I do that?
Talk about that.
All right, we'll talk about that later. Let's get to our business, though, because Dr. Robert Malone will be also participating on stage Saturday for your panel, right? About our current state of health and medicine. And boy, what a difference an election makes with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And, you know, the theme is America is back on track. And I'd love for you to sort of, from that perspective, as a doctor, as a person who was one of the first outspoken critics of the COVID-19 shutdowns and, of course, the use of the shot that they told us was a vaccine, which we now know they were constantly lying about, and so many people's lives were harmed by that. From your perspective, when you hear we're back on track, what do you make of that? In what way do you think we're back on track, health-wise, medicine-wise?
So for the United States to get back on track, we have to stop this censorship and the blocking of innovation. The problem with what's happened with the constraints on what we can talk about is that it has really killed our ability to innovate and to adapt to changing conditions.
Can you give me an example of how that manifests in the scientific community and the medical? And by the way, who's doing the blocking? Is it the government? Is it big corporations who benefit from that?
Can I select
stifle?
all of the above?
Okay, absolutely.
And now, of course, thank you to Doge, we have these the documentation about USAID and its role in suppressing information. It's been a widespread front, and that's what our book on Psywar talks about, is the nature of that. But looking forward, what matters is that we have really a new day and a new openness to considering alternative solutions in the whole health and human services space under Bobby and the people that Bobby is bringing in. And that's manifesting in all kinds of ways. I was afraid that after the hearings for confirmation, Bobby was going to be really kind of locked down, ring-fenced, because he agreed to a lot of things in those hearings. And what seemed to come out was that he was not going to really take on the issues of the childhood vaccine schedule and what has gone down at CDC and FDA in terms of allowing these enormous number of products into very young children that seem to be associated, or certainly there's appearance of association with various forms of chronic disease. But over the last couple of days, he's come out with a series of statements that make it quite clear that he's not going to pull his punches, which I'm super glad to see. I was afraid that they were going to kind of constrain him, keep him focused on chronic child illness, as we saw in the executive orders in establishing the Maha Commission. This emphasis on childhood disease in particular and chronic diseases and over-medication of children. But Bobby's coming out swinging.
Yeah, I saw that in his speech. It was something.
Yeah. I got to ask you, Dr. Malone, what do you think are going to be his two or three, I'm saying Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s, two or three top...
Apparently we call him Bobby if we're Dr. Robert
Bobby.
Malone. Yeah. Did
Bobby.
you notice the first name basis?
That's how he introduced himself to me.
He is lovely.
So.
And I have to say, it was... And we're so grateful to Dr. Malone, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. came to speak at one of our investor summits just a few years ago, and even some of our donors were saying, I don't want to, I don't want to meet him. Like, they were so, not wanting to meet him.
Right.
And then when he spoke, they were like, oh, my gosh, can we take a picture with
He's an
Robert
incredibly
F. Kennedy?
engaging guy.
So
You kind of get
engaging.
the Kennedy mystique thing. Yeah.
But let me ask you this. What are going to be the top two or three issues he's going to be dealing with right away. I mean, are we headed into any sort of pandemic, crisis, anything along those lines that you foresee at this point?
So Peter Hotez gave us the read-ahead last December when he came out with that amazing video, all disheveled, looked like he had just gotten out of bed.
Oh, that's like Larry every day.
Hey.
Sorry.
And gave us this dark warning that there was going to be a series of outbreaks as soon as Trump was inaugurated. And lo and behold, suddenly we have the amplification. We had this little story pop up about Ebola that turns out to be a nothing burger.
Yeah.
And we're having the amplification of bird flu fear.
Yeah. They're killing all the chickens, Dr. Malone.
Well, so apparently they've spent $1.2 billion from USDA to cull chicken flocks and compensate the companies that own those chicken flocks, or the farmers. And
Dude,
this is
Colonel Sanders weeps. This is awful. This is like a genocide of my chicken lunch.
The folks that have to buy eggs are the ones that are weeping right now, right?
Tell me about it.
It's just
and lo and behold, all you see from the media is look at the egg prices. Well, we see how that happened.
Yeah, well, cause and effect, right?
So, what was there an appropriate scientific reason why so many chickens were, as you said, cold?
So
what do you mean cold?
They killed them.
Okay, just say it. That they killed. They chopped their necks off.
Hurt people's feelings. These are pets.
We could talk about how to kill a chicken later, but go ahead, Robert.
Just so.
Coming up next, how to kill a chicken on O'Connor and Company.
Yeah, so this is standard USDA policy.
Yeah.
And it's what they've been doing for bird flu for quite a few years now. Remember
At
bird
this
flu?
Scale, though?
Yeah. Anytime you have it come into one of these massive chicken barns, then you kill the entire chicken barn or the duck flock or whatever. That's been the standard policy, and it hasn't worked because bird flu is endemic in waterfowl and all kinds of wild birds. You're never going to eradicate bird flu. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's going to continue to infect the chicken flocks. The only way out of the woods here, frankly, is some new thinking along the lines of we have to select and breed for H5N1 resistant chickens. It's very straightforward. And one of the big risks is that there's only a few different poultry operations right now that produce chicks that are of these heritage breeds. So we're down to like 3 or 4 sources of diversity, genetic diversity in chickens, and there's a risk that we're going to lose that. But what I think the only way out, they're talking now very actively, and the USDA has authorized Zoetis to deploy a mismatched flu vaccine, H5N2, into chicken flocks and other
mRNA, yeah.
No, it's not mRNA.
No, sorry.
It's a traditional
traditional
vaccine. Traditional vaccine that they already have on the shelf. That's H5N2. This is H5N1.
So is this a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a mismatch. So what's going to happen is you're going to select. You're going to have another leaky vaccine. Hello, did we just see this with COVID? We're going to have another leaky vaccine in the face of an ongoing outbreak. And what you're going to do is select for more vaccine-resistant H5N1. You're also going to suppress the symptoms in chickens, and so that's going to make it more likely that poultry workers are going to get infected because they're going to not know that the chickens are infected.
Sorry, I know we have to break.
Hold your
Can
thought.
we hold them?
Yeah,
We
always keep Robert Malone.
Okay, thank you.
For
I have
segments.
like 10 questions.
Exactly. And
how we kill a chicken.
Very thorough with his
we'll
answers.
Be right back.
More here on our cooking show in a moment. First, though, it's 7:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. God, I'm hungry.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Continuing now at Radio Row, CPAC. If you hear that Latin vibe, you know Mercedes Schlapp is with us for a bit. And we're joined by Dr. Robert Malone, who is, by the way, that's a fabulous conga that you're doing right now. I didn't know he could dance like that.
His wife dances better
Very
than he does.
impressive.
Yes, she does.
All right, so let's get back to the discussion. I love it. You're like wanting to know about what's happening now and what's going to happen in the future with the avian flu. I still want to get revenge for what we've already been through, so we'll get to that in a second. But
wow, that's intense.
Oh, I want revenge. No,
really?
I want Fauci in chains. Absolutely.
Okay, we can talk about Fauci in chains after.
Ahead.
That's a good title for a CPAC thing. Okay, so So, Dr. Malone, let me ask you, like, what are the symptoms? You talked about if these poultry farmers would be exposed to the bird flu. What are the symptoms of the bird flu, and how concerned should Americans be about it? Or are we at a point that you think between Bobby and what they're doing and Brooke Rollins, who's the Secretary of Agriculture, can they get a handle on this quickly?
So can they get a handle on it quickly? The answer is no. What are the symptoms? Because it's everywhere.
It's just
It's in all the migratory waterfowl. It's been in there for years.
Yeah.
It's all over Europe. They're already heating it, the storyline in Europe, and they're starting to cull flocks there. I mean, this is a global, certainly northern hemisphere problem, and we're not going to eliminate it in a moment.
Yeah.
Symptoms in humans. Most of the infections so far have been in dairy workers, particularly in California. And what they're getting is some mild upper respiratory and conjunctivitis. They're getting pink eye.
Yeah.
This is, it's new news. They weren't previously testing for whether bird flu infects other animals, and it absolutely infects dairy cows. And now we're seeing it, the question is it spreading into other mammals? And that is something that's being discussed a lot, is whether or not that's the case. There was a story that NPR featured about sea lions in Latin America dying off, but it turns out that's old news, and that stopped happening according to WHO. But they're constantly beating the drum about the fear of this.
So in addition to the bird flu, sorry, I feel like I'm dominating the segment.
I'm used to it.
Okay. What are the other, you think, big issues, problems that Bobby's going to face, as well as he's entering into this role?
Well, of course, there's bureaucratic intransigence.
Well, of course.
And this is what I've been afraid of. Bobby has never really worked in D.C. He's done a lot of stuff. He's been a health advocate. He's been a prosecuting attorney. He had this amazing case involving Monsanto and Roundup. But he's never managed a big agency like this, and there are entrenched interests. There are all kinds of people that got appointed in second and third tier positions while he was focused on getting through his confirmation process, including the guy who is now the head, apparently, according to CBS News, of the White House Office of Pandemic Preparedness, Jerry Parker. And Colonel Jerry Parker is a vet. He is
Hold
the
on,
former,
he's Colonel Parker?
He is Colonel Parker.
Like Elvis.
Well put.
Okay.
Yeah. Formerly of USAMRIID. And he is all in on this thesis that animal health needs to be the same priority as human health. And he is very much pro-vaccine. There's kind of a cohort of people. You could call it a club.
When you say pro-vaccine, because we're pro, a number of vaccines. The problem is that now we have to, for children, they have to take 80 vaccines.
Right, you
which
mentioned
I can't
very
stand.
specifically earlier the vaccine schedule, not necessarily the vaccines themselves, but the schedule. And I've experienced this with my children, where I had. My oldest was born with cerebral palsy. She had an event at birth, and so when she started the schedule, our pediatrician said, well, let's not do the regular schedule with her because she had issues with her brain, and we just want to monitor how she reacts. And I said, well, that's great. Let's do that. So we spread them out. I said, Doctor, why don't we do that with all children? If it's safer to do it this way.
Why?
And he told
Why
me,
the obsession?
he told me because the medical industry and the government has decided, I shouldn't say industry, the medical profession, and
No, I think
all right,
it's proper.
you're right. It was a slip.
Yeah.
They
The
said
pharmaceutical companies are all involved.
the decision was when the kid is in the examination room, you give as many vaccines as possible because we can't trust the parents to bring them back again.
Yeah.
And he said, but you guys are good parents, so you'll bring your kid back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So it would be safer for the kids if we spread out the vaccines, but we don't do it.
I spread out the vaccines with my girls, and I would raise questions at the doctor's office because I was like, why are you going to give 6 vaccines on like the 1-month-old or the 2-day-old?
And
You're
Mercy,
like, give me a break.
They give you
Hepatitis B.
a
Hepatitis B
stack
is a
of
great
paper,
example.
single-spaced,
Yes.
double-sided
Yeah.
as disclaimers as they're sticking the needle into your kid's
By
thigh.
the way, and after you give birth, you guys haven't experienced this because you're men, thank God, for 2 genders.
You are a birthing person.
Like, you're out of it. Like, you're just kind of like, what? Okay, I have this baby. Like, you don't know, so you're just going with
Maybe
whatever
we should let the doctor
Sorry.
respond to all of
this.
this.
Okay, go.
You're right. Go ahead, doctor.
Mercedes is on a roll. So there's Yeah, so absolutely the vaccine schedule needs to be reevaluated, and Bobby has explicitly stated that that's something that he's going to take on. He's also going to take on the focus on what are the data that support the safety and effectiveness, because a lot of these products are legacy. They were developed in the 1960s, and they're still using the same manufacturing process, and they were licensed using kind of procedures. The norms back then in the early 60s for clinical research were way different from now. You could get along with very small populations. You didn't capture data in the same way. So Bobby wants to relook at this. What I'm talking about with this kind of the folks that are, quote, pro-vaccine, is there's a group of people that kind of dominate public health right now that seem to believe that vaccine is the solution for any infectious disease.
Yeah.
Right? I use the metaphor that it's like a 3-year-old with a hammer, everything becomes a nail. Yeah. And that ain't necessarily so. There are some diseases that when you get them, and Bobby was talking about this the other day, that, for instance, he and all of his brothers all had measles. Actual measles.
Yeah.
And when you get actual measles and you recover, you generally don't get it again.
I was telling my kids, when a kid in my second grade class got the chicken pox, we all of our parents said,
chicken pox parties.
Go play with that kid.
We had chicken pox parties.
Get
Absolutely.
the chicken pox so you can get rid of it.
So there's things about children.
Chicken pox parties?
Yeah, absolutely. You did
different
things. They
things.
didn't have that down in.
It was a Midwest thing. Yeah.
No, it was all across the country. Yeah. So when children who are kind of special immunologically, has to do with thymus and things like this, their immune systems. When they get infected, they tend, for a number of these things, they tend to get lifelong immunity. And the vaccines, it's turning out, for those same diseases, do provide significant protection against those diseases, but it's not as robust and long-lived. And so we have breakthrough now with measles vaccine, and it turns out it's not the alpha and omega of protection against measles.
Yeah. Sadly, we got to leave it here. We could talk to you forever. He's a font of facts and information and important stuff that everybody cares about. Good to know. We'll book her next time. I implore you to check out Dr. Robert Malone's Substack. It is full of important, useful stuff. And come out here Saturday, check out his panel, and then stick around for the president afterwards. Dr. Malone, great to see you as always.
Thanks for having me on, Larry.
You bet. It is 7:25 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives with Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:36. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks so much for tuning in here today for our special day one of the incredible CPAC 2025. Joining us at 8:05 will be KT McFarland on the board of CPAC and, of course, national security expert. And my co-host this morning is none other than are you the Duchess of CPAC?
No, there is no royal titles.
It's Mercedes
I'm
Schlapp.
simply a servant on making sure that CPAC goes great, which is going to be an incredible lineup today with some surprises. I'm just saying.
Well,
big surprises.
You can't tell us what the surprise
I cannot.
is? But it is going to kick off with J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. If you're planning on coming down, and I hope you are, give yourself a little time for Secret Service.
Get over here because you got it.
But things are flowing now. Joining us right now, really important conversation. I'm excited to have it. In fact, we've already started the conversation, as often happens, is with John Hishta. He's the Senior Vice President of Advocacy Campaigns for the American Association of Retired Persons, AARP. And first and foremost, thank you so much for sponsoring our presence here at Radio Row at CPAC 2025. It means a lot to us, and it tells us your commitment to our listeners and what we do at WMAL. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be here to have this conversation with you all.
Well, and it hits home for me. Listen, this hits home for everyone in America, this issue. But I haven't shared this much with our listeners, but I just got back from spending 2 weeks in Portland as we've started hospice care for my father, who's suffering from dementia and has been for many years. And this is a story that every American experiences right now, is that we end up being caregivers as well. We should be caregivers for our parents, for our grandparents, for our spouses. And you are here to talk about the caregiver tax credit which I understand the president has also embraced this idea. Tell me what a caregiver tax credit would look like.
Well, just to take a step back first, as you said, it is such a personal issue. There are currently close to 50 million people in this country who identify as unpaid family caregivers.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a story, as we said. You either were a caregiver, are a caregiver, or you're going to be a caregiver, or you're going to need somebody to take care of you at the end of the day.
Don't worry, I'm going to end up taking care of Larry. We've already talked about, what our future is going to be like?
What's that?
Our future, we're going to go become the radio host for the villages. That's the future. And we're going to have our own little golf carts, and we're going to talk about the weather.
That actually sounds wonderful.
Doesn't that sound wonderful?
And sad.
Don't tell Bill Hess yet. We're just not.
Are you kidding? He'll still be our boss.
I could see the two of you in a golf cart where you yelling at him about how to drive a golf cart.
Yes.
It's like you've known us for a long time.
Meredith and Schlapp will be in the other golf cart going, they're going crazy.
That's right.
It's getting
enjoying
worse.
their peace and quiet.
Sorry, I got off track.
So you're right. Unpaid caregiver is a great way to put it, because these are people, this is their lives, not their livelihood. And
Correct.
My gosh, it is a drain on resources.
Every caregiver spends on average $7,200 a year out of pocket.
Yep.
To take care of their loved ones. That goes up when they're talking about taking care of their loved ones who happen to be veterans. It's almost $11,000 a year, believe it or not, because of so many complications. And so, what we're trying to do is take a very personal issue like this and bring it to the attention of our elected officials at the highest levels, whether it's the federal level or the state level or the local level. And in this case, one of the solutions we've been talking about for the past couple of years is a caregiver tax credit.
Yeah.
And it would be up to $5,000 for people who qualify. The president embraced it last year on the campaign trail. He actually spoke about it at the Madison Square Garden rally that he held towards the end of the campaign.
I think we talked about that rally a little bit.
And it was actually in the Republican platform as well. And a lot of it has to do with, as well, people want to age in their homes.
Yes.
And they they want care at home.
Yeah.
And the system needs to, in many respects, this is a bad word to describe it, but rejigger itself so that we can provide more incentives for people to stay at home and care for people at home.
Anything that can help us have that cultural shift, because sadly we've got into this pattern where the elderly in our lives just sort of get shuttled off to a home or to a place.
Right.
If they can stay at home with their loved ones around them and care for them.
Or be in a facility where you know that they're being well taken care of.
Right.
Just having options. I think the key is having options. But let me ask you this, because we know that the budget reconciliation bill, there has been this push for the one big, beautiful bill by Donald Trump. It's all in tight margins in terms of the fact of even getting that bill passed. Now, the Senate has their version of they divided into two. You've been up on the Hill. What is your sense of what's happening? Is there a possibility? Are you really thinking, wait, we can get this tax credit in, the caregiver's tax credit in?
We feel fairly confident, but like anything else, depending on the day and the way you describe the process, sometimes things are in, sometimes things are not in.
Right.
And there's a lot of conversations going on right now. And so our job is to spend time with folks like yourself to continue to make the case for the caregiving tax credit, knowing that there are a lot of other options on the table that people want to try to get into the, quote, one big, beautiful bill. And so I describe it as almost like a washing machine. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of things in the
agitation,
mix, and we want to make sure the caregiving tax credit is part of that package when it's all said and done.
But John Hishta, AARP has something going for it here. You've got the public on your side. This is so popular, and I know that you guys have been pulling on it.
We do.
And I don't know who would be against it. Politically, this makes sense, right?
We just got out of the field. We had Tony Fabrizio, who you guys know, who does a lot of polling for us, and I've known Tony for years. We went into the field and tested the different types of tax credits and tax breaks that are being discussed right now.
Yeah.
And the caregiving tax credit, believe it or not, is number one.
Is that right?
It's
because it affects everyone.
Anything.
It makes sense.
It really does.
So it's really, and again, this goes across, this isn't a red issue, blue issue, Democrat, Republican. So it's really just dollars and cents.
That's
so
right.
what can people, so people are probably hearing about this for the first time. If they wanted to sort of let their representative know that if, as you make the sausage with this reconciliation bill, let's make sure the caregiver tax credit is there, what should they do?
They should call their office, call their congressman, call their senator, and to your point on how we started this conversation, every time a personal story is told to a member of Congress, it affects them. We can talk about the numbers. We can say how overwhelmingly popular it is. But when you hear the actual stories from your constituents about what you go through on a day-to-day basis,
the stories
it
really
truly
is about the stories.
affect people when it comes to their decision-making.
Well, and also, Mercedes, as Elon Musk is discovering and revealing for all of us through Doge, there's so much garbage that gets through that nobody ever notices, and it doesn't reach every American. This affects everyone.
But again, like as you're talking to leadership in the House side or in the Senate side, I mean, you would think this would be a priority. Like, I know they're doing the no tax on tips. That's a big issue that the president's honing in on, child tax credit. But this is really, I think this is really revolutionary.
It's also kind of a
no-brainer.
It's a bit of a modest
you
tax
could go
credit,
beyond politics on this. Like, you could have independents and Democrats and Republicans support this. This should be a bipartisan issue.
And from a political standpoint, when you look at the polling, anybody who supports it, it just increases their popularity with their own constituents. By a large number.
What are the odds? If you had to put your money on it?
I'm not a betting man, Larry. I just keep working something until it happens. And so because it's so important, we're going to keep working not just the caregiving tax credit, but the issue writ large, because it's something that the country needs to address and deal with over the next several years.
Well, you're in the right place to talk to the right people here at CPAC 2025. And if I may, I know how many staffers and legislative leaders on Capitol Hill listen to us every morning.
And we're having Speaker Johnson here today.
That's right.
That's right.
So
you can ask him about it.
That's a great question. Who's doing the panel? We've got to look at that out.
Well, you're asking me. You're
Larry,
the queen of CPAC.
Come on. You're usually the one taking care of all critical crisis comms issues that we have every second.
By the way, Speaker Johnson's son goes to the Naval Academy.
Right.
So
Why don't
just
you
another thing I can talk about.
Mercedes is the power behind it.
That's right. Exactly.
If I'm moderating that panel, you can just hold my coffee in backstage.
Again with
that's
the
your
coffee
job,
holding.
the coffee holding.
Except when you drive a cart.
John Hishta. Yeah, exactly. AARP, again, thank you for sponsoring our presence here at CPAC. We're making the most of it on your behalf, and I'm going to continue talking.
Making sense of your world.
I don't know where to begin.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Thanks for taking my call.
Making sense of the news.